While working on another video topic, I was informed of the talks Trump, JD Vance, and Zelensky just had and the argument that followed.
He broke the ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Do you think that it's respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean. And don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future.
Oh no.
God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You
God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that.
That's exactly what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's backed you far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once?
You're running low on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing. And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, but you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what
That wasn't with me.
It
That was
wasn't
with
with you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person. You got to be more thankful. Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
I think this is a terrible move from Zelensky, if his goal is to maintain any form of positive relationships with the United States and its current administration. You cannot ego check these two, especially live in front of the media. If there's one thing to know about Trump, it's that he loves anyone that strokes his ego. Anyone who even has the slightest bit of disfavor towards Trump or his policies immediately gets put on the shit list. And JD Vance, while I appreciate his abilities and transparency as a vice president, has no reason to escalate this. He could have simply responded to Zelensky's ask for diplomacy with details, maybe on how this time it will be different compared to when Biden or Obama were in office. Yet he took offense to what I deem to be a valid and unaggressive questioning. Asking for Zelensky to basically get on his knees and beg for help is such a terrible look. This man is fighting for his country's independence, and while yes, he's relying on other countries, including the US, to help him fight that fight, it ultimately is being paid with Ukrainian blood. With that said, I think Zelensky has every right to be upset and desire more than supposed diplomacy when Russia and Putin have no consequences for breaking any form of agreements. Ukraine used to have nukes, but gave them up in 1994, when they were one of the parties that signed the NPT, or the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, in exchange for economic compensation and assurances from Russia. Of those parties that signed, the US, the UK, France, and Russia all signed the agreement. Yet 20 years later, Putin begins invading Ukrainian land, starting with the annexation of Crimea in 2014. After civil unrest over then-President Viktor Yanukovych refusing to sign the European Union-Ukraine Association Agreement, instead choosing to align Ukraine more with the heavily Russia-favored Eurasian Economic Union. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on how the people of Ukraine feel about Russia, but from an outsider's perspective, it looks like Ukraine was on its way to becoming a more westernized country and decoupling its reliance from Russia, favoring Europe and the US. I think Putin saw that he would soon lose Ukraine's support and possibly economic dominance in certain sectors like oil and gas, steel and grain. I don't think it's a coincidence that the largest offshore gas field in Crimea, the Skifska gas field, was discovered in 2012, merely 2 years before Russia's invasion and annexation. The gas field alone, not including any others in the Black Sea, has enough natural gas to supply Europe for the next 80 years. This means if Viktor Yanukovych had signed that agreement with the European Union, it may have led to stronger ties and economic preference. Europe would more likely buy from an ally. This would have disastrous ramifications for Russia. There's also the fact that the Black Sea is an important strategic military asset, and Russia losing it would be a major downside. But I think Putin simply felt that Russia's influence over the world was dwindling, and even the countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union alongside it were slowly being swayed towards Western ideals and culture. In a last-ditch effort, Putin aimed to solidify Russia's place as the main supplier of oil and gas to the EU, all while tightening its grip on the last remaining strongholds of the USSR. And no amount of diplomacy saved Ukraine from the 2014 annexation of Crimea, or the full-scale invasion of 2022 that is currently ongoing. And seeing the comments saying Zelensky should be more thankful is wild, as I've read multiple articles and seen multiple interviews where Zelensky thanks the US for the support we have given thus far. And Trump jumping in, trying to make it seem like Zelensky's anger is unwarranted or uncouth is baffling. I do agree that making a deal between two enemies is impossible when being partial to one or another, but the US is already more partial towards Ukraine. Russia didn't forget the Cold War, and hasn't forgotten the sanctions or military loans we've given Ukraine, so trying to act like the US is impartial is just stupid. If you really want to stop this war, someone has to call Russia's bluff, but that's a tough one to make when it could result in a war that's never been seen before. We've had 2 world wars, but none where the big players both have nuclear weapons. At this point, it feels like the US and EU are just hoping that Ukraine can either outlast or somehow beat back Russia, as they are the only ones that would have any reason to fight with actual troops. But the troops are running lower and lower every day, and eventually, no amount of military equipment will be enough when there's nobody left to man it. I'm hoping that the guy who wrote The Art of the Deal manages to make one that saves Ukraine and gives them a future to look forward to, even if I think this display was a terrible look for the US. I really do hope something gets done, but I think ultimately, this probably was the nail in the coffin for the US's support of Ukraine, which is crazy to think about. It's crazy that the US would rather play friends with our longest lasting enemy than a country who so badly wanted to adopt Western ideals and culture. Tell me what you think in the comments. That's it for this video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.